Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramona, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast. Steve, Ramona.
Welcome everyone to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm so fired up to have you come today. I'm so fired up I can't even say it. We're doing part 2 with my guest. I'm going to tell you, he's changed my life, my health, my mindset, and everything. And I know he's got a team, but people like this truly are servant's heart. And I want you to take notice. And I'm going to say at the end about sharing this link, because you're going to learn a lot today that I've learned. That literally I beat that. Well, I'm not diabetic anymore. I'm off cholesterol medicine. Things have changed in my life in a matter of 4 or 5 months. At 63, that I wake up every morning with such a big smile. But we're also bringing guests on like Eric today that's going to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you. I want you to take that to heart when you listen to my guest and listen to Eric, because there's so much that we can offer and that you can offer others. I want to thank my sponsor, Pantheon. Imagine being part of a high-end, highly thought leader platform of high-income earners, business owners, founders who are trying to impact and change the world. For more information on Pantheon, just reach out to me and I'll get you all that information. With that being said, I'm going to jump in. Here's part 2. Eric, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Steve. It's so good to be back with you.
Yeah, me too. And again, thank you for all you've done. And, audience, I'm going to say this. I was coachable. I'm going to talk about myself, and Eric loves me for that. And I love myself. That's something to keep in mind when you think about your health. Be coachable, be able to learn. And we're going to talk more about that. Jump into the 5 pillars. We talked about before the show. How can these 5 pillars help the people listening?
Yeah, thank you. So there's kind of an art side to health and there's a science side to health. And last time we sort of talked about the science side of things, some of the actionable things that we can do to have more optimal cognitive and mental and physical health. But the art side of things is sort of the social side. It's the interpersonal side. It's understanding how to have the best relationships possible in our lives. And one of the things that I studied in college was communication, which looks at observable patterns of behavior. And over time, I developed a framework called the Vital 5 Pillars of Effective Interaction. And so let me tell you, Steve, where this came about so that the audience has an appreciation of what this framework is and what it can do for them. Because it is game-changing if you have a parent or another loved one who's living with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. But it's also a framework that helps in every relationship of our lives. So years ago, the Alzheimer's Association reached out to me and said, Eric, we want you to be the keynote speaker at a conference of family caregivers. And the topic would be how to deal with really difficult situations. Like suppose you've got a wife that's 110 pounds and she's got a hulk of a husband that's 6'5" and 250 pounds. And he's got Alzheimer's disease. And he looks at his wife one day and says, who are you? She says, I'm your wife. And he says, no, you're not. Get out of my house. Well, how on earth would you deal with a situation like that? Well, I was excited to get invited to do this because at the time I was teaching an 18-hour workshop course to master's students at Boise State University. And a lot of what we covered in that course was this very topic. And so we planned for the speaking engagement. And right at the end, right before the meeting planner hung up the phone, she dropped a bomb in my lap. And she said, Eric, I almost forgot to tell you, you're going to have 25 minutes for this keynote. And boom, it's like my brain was going to explode. I thought, how on earth am I going to do that? But I'd already committed and I thought, well, it'll be a good lesson in brevity. So I just prepared by writing down every good skill or technique that I had ever learned. By this point, I had spent 16 years running assisted living and memory care communities. That's kind of the where I started my career. And so I looked for patterns. I wrote everything down, brain dumped, and thought, what stands out here? And I found there were 5 basic principles that every good dementia care technique or interaction pattern that I could think of came from. Then I thought, oh, I could talk about 5 things in 25 minutes. So I did. And I got done with that speech expecting to walk off stage and kind of go use the restroom and come back for the rest of the conference. And instead, I walked out the door and there was a line of people waiting to talk. And they were looking at me going, well, have you written a book on this? And I want to ask you more about this thing. And that really opened my eyes. And I thought, oh, we're on to something. And now I've been blessed in the years since to share these principles on stages in 39 of the 50 states. And I hear from people all the time about the difference that they make for people. So I'm excited to share with that context.
That's perfect.
So let me just pause there. Any questions or thoughts? Or
no, thank you for sharing that story, because that's the impact that you're making. And if you've written a book, it's funny. Hey, have you written a book? It's funny people go there, which is good. But let's jump on the 5 pillars, because again, it's for across the board for almost everybody, which is what I love about it.
Yeah. So I want to give everybody an easy way to remember these 5 things, so that hopefully, even if you're not taking notes, they'll stick, or they're more likely to stick. Acronyms make things easier. So think of the word vital. I named it the vital 5 pillars for a reason. And in this case, we're going to start with the T in vital. Notice the T is in the center of the word, which means the other 4 letters kind of hinge on it in a way. So just picture that, because this T is, I think, one of the biggest problems that we're up against. Certainly, I think it's the biggest problem interpersonally that we face when we're trying to serve another person. And it's what I call the task trap. The task trap is what happens when we're too busy, we're being routine focused, we're avoiding interpersonal responsibility, and we start putting the task ahead of the person. So maybe an easier way to put it is, if you go straight to the task, you're going to fail. Step 1 in every single human interaction is to make a meaningful connection with the other person. If we don't do that, if we don't establish a relationship of trust, we can't do anything else. You would never open the front door after you hear a knock, and if you see a complete stranger there, you wouldn't say, oh, come on in. You would expect them to establish some rapport, and maybe under certain specific circumstances these days, you might consider letting someone in your house. But most of the time, you're not just going to open the door and say, come on in. If you open the door and said, may I help you? And that person just barged right in your house, you'd be more than a little bit upset. And yet interpersonally, that's often what we do with people. We go right to the task. And when it comes to healthcare situations, it's institutionalized. If someone has advanced dementia, for example, let's say they live in assisted living or skilled nursing or memory care, well, there are all sorts of institutional norms that reinforce the task trap. Things like rules, policies, procedures, care plans. They're just a list of tasks. And we start thinking that success is checking those things off the list. And yet, if we wrote a care plan for you and me, Steve, wouldn't it be about the same? Independent in bathing, independent in dressing, independent in feeding ourselves, independent in walking around, and so forth. That's because those things are common. Once we become adults, we can do those things. And yet, if you pause and you think about it, you start to realize, wait a minute, we would have very similar care plans, but you and I are totally different people. We don't live in the same area. We don't have the same life experiences. That's because who we are is largely what happens after those types of activities of daily living are dealt with. And yet in a healthcare situation, everything centers on the help that we need to provide and the tasks that need to be performed. Well, in every aspect of life, we can focus on people or we can focus on tasks. And it's my contention that when we're focused on tasks, we start slipping into treating other humans as objects. And I'll tell you what, if you kick an object, it'll go wherever you kick it. But if you kick a person, they're going to kick you back, right? It just happens in life. So think about a choice of maybe your local grocery store clerk. If you had a job checking groceries, you actually have a choice. You can stand there and fall into the task trap, and you can get hung up on the task, and you can say, I have the worst job imaginable. All day long, all I do is run these stupid groceries across the scanner. It is the most boring thing that anybody could possibly do. But if you step outside the task trap and you focus on people first and you make a meaningful connection with people, you start to see the world from a different vantage point. And you might be more inclined to think, I have the most interesting job, because one thing that everybody has in common is that we all have to eat. So I get to interact with people from all walks of life, all different socioeconomic classes, from all sorts of different countries. I happen to check groceries while I do it, but it's fascinating and I love meeting people. Well, the only difference there is a decision to not fall into the task trap and to instead make a connection with people first.
That's
So
powerful.
now I've taken quite a bit of time to unpack that, because that, I think, is a central problem. It deserves a lot of attention. But any thoughts or comments back
Trader
on?
Joe's comes to my mind. My wife's a manager at Trader Joe's, and that's what they do. She loves checking people. She's talking to them, getting to know. We do, and business people out there, what he's saying from, if you're jumping on a one-on-one, don't jump in and start pitching them. Don't jump in and tell them all these things you want to do. Ask to build a relationship by asking questions. Get to know them. Get to know the person before you do. I love it. It's across the board. It works.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, and yet what is simple to do is simple not to do. And we're in a hurried world, and sometimes we just skip that step.
Yeah.
So what about the other 4 of the vital 5 pillars? We've talked about the T, which is central. And if we're doing that first, then let's go back to the beginning. Let's take the V. V in vital reminds us to validate the other person's emotional experience. And to really do this well, I think we need to understand emotions in general. And I think a lot of people don't have a helpful perspective on emotion. We have emotions because we have human bodies. We experience emotion because of physiology, because we have an experience and it gets filtered through our beliefs, our attitudes, our values, our prior knowledge, our neuroanatomy, and it pops out as this neurochemical hormonal thing called a feeling. So let me give you a super overgeneralization, because neurotransmitters are really complex. They do lots of different things, but it's helpful for the purpose of this discussion to oversimplify. If you're feeling love and connection, your oxytocin is up. If you're feeling stress, you got some cortisol flowing. Fight or flight's kicking in, you've got some adrenaline, noradrenaline. Again, that's a gross oversimplification, but you get the idea. Now, suppose, Steve, that your right leg was broken, like you had a femur fracture and you were in a full leg cast. And I happen to know that you like water skiing and I like water skiing. How much sense would it make for me to say, hey, Steve, knock it off. Take the stupid cast off. We're going skiing. It's all in your head. I mean, that's ridiculous. Nobody would ever do that. But I bet you've been upset at some point and you've had someone say, now, Steve, just calm down. That's usually not very helpful for people because it's invalidating. And we even do this to ourselves. A lot of us go through life categorizing and judging emotion. Here's what that looks like. Is this good emotion or is this bad emotion? Should I be feeling this or should I not? I have a friend who says, don't should on yourself. I think that's kind of fun, but we try to categorize it and then we judge it. Why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't feel this way. Or we try to talk other people off the emotional ledge because we don't think that they should be feeling something. Well, sorry, in the moment that you're feeling it, it's actually real. It's a physiological thing. And you would never tell someone with other problems that you recognize as physiological to just knock it off. But we do that with emotion. So what could we do instead of categorize and judge? I encourage people to observe and label, both with themselves and with others. You seem frustrated. You seem upset. You seem angry. Do you want to talk about it? If we're observing it and we're calling it out and we're putting a word to it in a non-judgmental, non-accusatory, non-threatening kind of a way, what we're doing is saying, I'm present. I'm here for you. I'm listening. I can tell that you're having a human experience. I don't always like it when I'm feeling that way. And if you want to process with someone, if you want me to listen and to be supportive, I'm here. Well, that's completely different than trying to take over for that person's brain's job. It's their brain's job to regulate emotion. And if we just take over that, it's not very helpful.
Yeah.
So validate emotional experience.
And what comes to mind real quick is when people have lost their fathers died, and that person walks up and says, man, I lost my father. You know, this is what you need to do. You need to do this and this, instead of saying, I'm so sorry you lost your father. How can I support you?
Yeah.
Is that okay? I'm on the right path. Perfect. That's awesome. That's a big one because it happens a lot.
Yeah. Or even just acknowledging it and just saying, that's really hard.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
just leave it. Sometimes we overcomplicate things. And sometimes we don't allow someone to experience a negative emotion. I could tell you stories all day long when I was doing memory care of people with advanced dementia who were angry. They like in the dining room, someone would say, this food is terrible. And logically, I know, okay, one of the earliest symptoms of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's is loss of smell. So if you can't smell, you can't taste. Most people learned that in the COVID pandemic. And so logically, I'm like, yeah, no joke, your food tastes terrible. You can't taste it anymore. Well, you can't have a logical conversation with someone who's lost 50 to 70% of the mass of their brain because they've got this horrible neurodegenerative disease. But what can you do that's emotionally validating? Well, people would say, this food is terrible. And even though I was the executive director of the community, I'd say, that's awful. I'm telling the boss. And they're like, yeah, that's right. How's your day going? And I mean, it would just immediately change the dialogue.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay, that's actually kind of a segue into the I in the Vital Five Pillars, because what I just did was improvise and be in the moment. Now, if you think about someone living with advanced Alzheimer's disease, the memory control tower, so to speak, the hippocampus of the brain, sort of the librarian of the brain, might be in the first to the 15th percentile volume-wise. If you did an MRI and you measured the size of that structure, they might be missing most of it. And what that looks like on the outside is they might only remember things for mere seconds at best, and they might remember the distant past. A lot of us have more firsts between the ages of 15 and 30 than at any other point in life. So first car, first date, college graduation, first day on the job, you get married, you have kids, those things are cemented in. So you might be dealing with someone, if they're living with advanced dementia, who only remembers things for seconds and some real highlights from ages 15 to 30. Which means that life for them is kind of like they were just beamed on the scene moments ago. It means life becomes an exercise in improvisation. And the same rules that would apply in improv comedy apply in a situation like that. Rules like, you don't say no, you say yes, or you just roll with it. Whatever is real in that moment on stage, you go with. And however the stage is set up dictates how the action goes. If you have certain props on stage in a literal improv act, those props are more likely to get used. If you don't have a prop there, it's not going to show up in the play. So if you want to understand how someone with dementia is experiencing the world, pause for a moment before you interact with them and say, okay, I'm about to step on stage in an improv act. And they might be living in the past, that might be their paradigm, but I'm just going to roll with it as if I'm on stage. And the way that they're responding and the types of things they're saying and doing are going to be heavily influenced by how that stage is set and how I'm behaving on it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really helpful when you're around people with dementia. It's also helpful in everyday interaction because we are all kind of making things up as we go. Steve, you and I haven't scripted this. I don't know what you're going to say next. You don't know what I'm going to say next. So life is kind of a perpetual improv act. But if you think about the principle of improvise and be in the moment, there's a little bit more to unpack. How many of us are actually focused and fully present in the moment? I don't think many of us. We live in a world of distraction. Some people think that listening is a pretty passive activity and they don't control their mental white space. So their mind just sort of wanders when they're in a conversation with someone else. Listening is actually the most active thing that anybody can possibly do because only about 7 or 8% of communication is words themselves. Everything else is indirect. And to pay attention to someone's tone and pitch and cadence and body language and themes and verbal complexity and everything else that goes with it, that is not easy. That's going to exhaust any mental white space we had if we're fully listening. And you know, and I know from business and life, that the minute you dial into somebody else and you really honestly listen to them, number one, you learn amazing things. Everybody has something to teach us if we're just listening. And number two, we can serve them at a much deeper level because I think insights come differently when we're that dialed in.
Amen.
So let me pause. There's, obviously a lot to unpack there,
but it's true. It's listening is the active listening is, I talk about my ASLA principle, ask, shut up, listen, ask. People go, why you put shut up in there? Because we shut up, but you just said it. But my mind's wandering. I've shut up. I'm not saying anything, but I'm not listening. And that's the key component there that you could say not listening, but I like shut up because I'm like, wow, shut up. Yeah, shut up. Give somebody an opportunity to, present themselves. With these improvise, the be in the moment is be in this podcast, Steve. Be the host. Don't go, hey, what am I having for lunch later? Oh, I've got to go to dinner. And that's not being in the moment. And that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And in the context of dementia care, it's live one moment to the next because that's exactly how the person that you're serving is experiencing life. It's like they just got beamed on the scene a few moments ago. And in the same way that for Star Trek fans or even Harry Potter fans, when someone just whoosh, shows up on the scene, what do? They look around. They're wondering, okay, is it safe? Where am I? What's going on? What do I have to respond to? They're making a lot of split-second decisions with the information that they're taking in. And if you can't remember things more than seconds, that's all that you're doing. And so we can walk that road with people.
Right. I love this.
So we talked about validate emotional experience, improvise and be in the moment, terminate the task trap. So what about the A and the L of vital? So A is accommodate sensory deficits. Now, with diseases like Alzheimer's, it's very common that most or all of the senses get impaired in some way. But it's the visual and processing problems that cause most of the disconnects that we experience. So a quick list of things is like, but when it comes to visual processing, most people with advanced Alzheimer's have lost peripheral vision, they've lost depth perception, they don't see things that are similar in color when they're right next to each other, they don't process movement as fluidly. So think about life for them as if they're looking through tubes. They've got like a 10 to 20 degree visual field, which means if you approach from the side, you scare them. It means the closer you are to them, the less of you they can see. And so if you're standing over them, not only are you interpersonally saying, I'm in charge of this interaction, because we tend to defer to people that are up higher than us visually, but they may not be able to see more than just your chest in front of them. They can't even see a face. So if you want to help someone feel more in control, get at or below their eye level. And I think that applies for all of us, really. Nobody likes it when someone hovers over them. If we're not recognizing their visual processing problems and we're trying to get someone to sit on a white shower chair in a white shower, well, guess what? They can't see and they might want to fight that. Or if the floor and the wall are the same color, they might not see where the floor ends and the wall begins, and we're going to have some disconnects. So we need to accommodate those things. Put the colored towel on the shower seat so they can actually see what's there. Recognize that if you're out for a walk, They might not see where the sidewalk ends and the gutter begins because it's all the same concrete. Well, that's a fall waiting to happen. If you got mom living upstairs and she's been there for the last 20 years, she's going to remember most likely through even muscle memory that there are stairs that go down to the kitchen. But if you got the same carpet that goes down the hallway and then turns and goes down the stairs, guess what? She can't see very well. Maybe she can't see that first step. And if she misjudges that, that's a hip fracture waiting to happen. When it comes to language processing problems, a lot of people living with dementia lose vocabulary pretty rapidly, and they also don't understand more than about 50 to 70% of what they hear. Can you imagine how hard it would be, Steve, if you were only catching every other word in the conversation? You would assume a lot of things incorrectly. It would be difficult. So what would be helpful? Well, if you were in that situation, then I and anybody that I was coaching, I would encourage them to treat you as if you spoke English as a second language, which means we've got to slow down, use simple words and phrases, use like 7 words or less, and then give you time to process. And if someone speaks English as a second language, then there's a heightened sense of nonverbal. So we might need to leverage more nonverbal communication and fewer words. Now, when it comes to everyday interaction, of course, not everybody has visual and language processing problems or other sensory deficits, but we all see the world in a different way. We all have different experiences. We all have different opinions and beliefs and ideas, and we value different things. And that's normal. That's part of being human. And I love how Stephen Covey put it. He said, first seek to understand, then to be understood. So I think when it comes to accommodating all these sensory deficits, it also implies that we need to understand other people and how they see the world. And if we will follow your good advice in your ask paradigm and just shut up for a minute and listen to them first, then people will feel heard. And if we genuinely want to understand things, and instead of asking provoking questions, which usually start with a why, like, well, why do you think that? Oh, that's provoking. But if you say, how did you come to that conclusion? That's interesting. Tell me more about that. Well, people are often more than happy to share how they arrived at the point that they see the world through that lens. And I promise you, if you do that and you give people that airtime, then when you say, oh, that's so interesting, I actually have a little bit of a different view. Would you like to hear it? People say, yeah, by all means, because they have felt heard, they have felt deeply respected. And I think that's something that's missing in so much of our dialogue these days.
Yeah.
We have extreme thinking, extreme communication without a high degree of respect. And it's not that hard to get back to it. These are basic principles.
Grace. That's all I think about. Give people grace. I'm simplifying it again, but it's just give them grace. Meet them at their point, and things will get along.
Yeah.
Well, we got just enough time to talk about the last but not least, L.
Okay. L in vital reminds us that life history is our most important tool. It gives us 2 key things. So think about an L if you make it with your fingers. There's 2 points on that L. So imagine that those points are context and identity. Now, if you're around someone living with dementia, well, if they're on stage in a perpetual improv act, then how they interpret the context that they're in really depends on their life history. For example, if I were beamed on the scene as someone with dementia, and what the scene looked like was a classroom setting, there are desks or tables and chairs facing forward and maybe a whiteboard at the back of the room. Well, I have been teaching in one way or another for 25 years now. And if I'm living in the past and the immediate present, I'm probably going to walk up to that board and turn around and start trying to hold class. But for some people, the thought of public speaking, it has them weighing whether or not they might want to consider jumping off a cliff instead. It's so terrifying for people. Well, if that's their life history, then they're probably just going to take a seat in the class and participate in a different way. life history also allows us to understand how someone is used to seeing him or herself. If we don't treat people in ways consistent with how they see themselves, we're sunk. So, do we have time for a real quick example of this
Yes,
from my
please.
career? So, I took care of a guy named Art who, when he was working, he ran a meatpacking company, and his employees loved him because he didn't just sit in a corner office and bark out commands. He actually went station to station, checking on people, working with them. And on the weekends, he coached his kids' little league teams. He was a devout Catholic and went to mass every Sunday. He was just, pillar of the community, really good guy. When he had Alzheimer's disease and he lived in a memory care community that I worked in earlier in my life, if he wasn't otherwise occupied, he would go room to room checking on things and checking on people. He was acting his part in the play of life. And he would take his little walker with his basket on the front of it, and he would go pick something up. So, like, he'd pick up a water bottle, for example, and he'd put it in his walker basket. Well, if that was your water bottle, Steve, then well-meaning staff members would be triggered to go up to Art, or they do this to the Arts of the world, and they say, Art, I know you didn't mean to, but this belongs to Steve, and we need to give it back. Well, I don't care how sweetly you put it. You just implied that he's a thief. And he may be really forgetful and have some cognitive problems, but he knows for sure that he's not a thief. And so you know what he would do? He'd say, you can't have that. Get away from me. Stop that. Now, it's also falling into the task trap. If you just look at the task, I got to get this water bottle back to Steve before he gets angry. So step one in every interaction is to terminate the task trap. We have to connect with Art first. And so we set the task aside. And the easy way to connect with Art, and lots of people with dementia, is to just be his long-lost friend and leverage the things that he does remember. So I'd walk up to him and I'd say, Art, oh, it's so good to see you. How's the meat packing business? And usually he'd say something like, oh, we just had our best year yet. And I'd say, how's Elaine? That was his wife. Best thing I ever did was marry that woman, was like his stock answer. They had a great relationship. That took seconds. But once there was trust, then I could do something that fit his identity. Well, he sees himself as helpful. He's doing good things. He's friendly. He's productive. So what could I do? Well, I would look in his walker basket. I'd pick up the object and I'd say, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I've been looking everywhere for this. What would I do without you? I know right where it goes. Pats on the back the whole way off to Steve's room we'd go. We'd put it back. He never fought that. And I've actually used that with hundreds of people around the country. That's a technique that really works. Well, how does this apply in everyday interaction with people who don't live with dementia? Well, life history still matters. We get further when we know a little something about people. And when it comes to identity, Abraham Lincoln said tact is the ability to describe others as they see themselves. And heaven knows the world could use a little more tact these days. We need to recognize what people have been through and maybe a little bit of how they came to seeing the world the way that they do. And when we steer from that vantage point, I think we're going to get further. We're going to be more collaborative and more successful. And I'm so glad we could talk about it and I could share these with you.
I've got nothing more to say than audience. Read this over vital, validate, improvise, task trap, accommodate sensory deficits, life history, context. That works for everybody. And you'll have a better life when you do it. How can people reach out to you, find out about what you're doing? Your community is awesome. How can they find the community?
Oh, thank you. The easiest way to learn about all the things we do, whether people want to make their brain better and they want to leverage cutting edge science and even get blood work done, or they're looking for caregiving techniques or anything related to the brain and brain health, just go to amindforallseasons.com. amindforallseasons.com. We got a free newsletter there. I do a daily video that I know you watch, Steve, called the Caregiver Minute, but we talk about new research, we talk about brain science, we talk about caregiving tips and techniques, and it's like 3 to 5 minutes long every Monday through Friday. If you want that, amindforallseasons.com/caregiver minute, kind of all one word spelled out.
And audience, get the news, the video. I get it every day. It's just not for dementia. It's we're caregiving our wife, our husband, our friends. That's why I love what you're doing. Yeah, you're focused on dementia and Alzheimer's because that's the massive problem. But this resonates with everybody. That Vital works. I'm going to use it. So I appreciate you. Thank you for being an incredible second guest. We're going to bring Eric back multiple times because there's so much that we're unpacking here that can help you. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, grab this link and share it with people that are dealing with people that they're caregiving or have possible dementia or have issues or health issues or whatever it may be. Because as Eric has taught me, the more you learn, the more you grow. So grab that link, subscribe, and me and Eric want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast, and we'll see you all in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.